Hello, I'm David Mandell, one of the principals and founders of OJM Group, and today we are going to be discussing asset protection, specifically Asset Protection 101, what every physician should know. Before we jump in though, it's important to note that this video is for informational purposes only, and the information may not be suitable for your personal circumstances. Please contact a professional before attempting to execute any of these strategies. Also, please review closely the disclaimers at the end of this presentation for more information. One other note before we get started. As you can see here, we've written many books, and if you find this information helpful, we would encourage you to check out one of our books. OJM Group has written over 10 books for physicians, and as a special offer, ViewMedi members may download an ebook in Kindle or iPad form, or order a hard copy completely for free. We'll discuss how to do this at the end of the presentation. So, why protect assets? Probably something that most of you as physicians don't need an answer to because you have this on your mind. And what's on your mind probably is medical malpractice. Certainly, one of the negatives of being a physician is that it is a high liability field. I've seen this not only with 1,000 physician clients, but my younger brother, my father, my grandfather are all physicians. And certainly my father and my brother think about that and are concerned about liability. But you also have liability if you own a practice for being an employer. And there are certainly many claims out there, and we have clients that I have had when I was practicing law and then now at OJM Group who came to me because of a claim being an employer. You have liability to third parties like Medicare and billing companies for overbilling and many of the other issues named here. And you even have new areas of liability with the practice like HIPAA violations, etc. If you own property, premises liability, and all of us have personal liability from either driving cars or other business arrangements, or for some of you, even teenagers driving your car where you will be held responsible. So I think the reasonable approach is to, again, aim for the best, plan for the worst, and consider asset protection planning as part of your wealth plan. It shouldn't be, I don't think, the most important thing. Some of our other videos here on tax reduction, on investing, are probably much more important in the long run, but spending some time and energy on how to protect assets is, I think, probably the main lesson of 101, part of every physician's financial plan. In the books, you'll see, which I hope you all get, we use the sliding scale. And I've been using this for about 15 years in the books and materials. And really, the impetus behind this is to give physicians an idea of where a tool is on the endeavor of asset protection planning is not black and white. It is truly a scale of exposure on one side, on the left side, to protection on the right side. And all attorneys and all advisors in the area of asset protection probably agree on the two extremes. What is total exposure, which would be assets in your own name, assets in a partnership, and assets in a practice vis-a-vis claims against the practice. And on the other end of the highest level of protection are the state and federal exempt assets, or where you give assets away to irrevocable trusts. In the middle are a lot of different types of tools, from types of ownership, like tenancy by the entirety in certain states, limited liability companies, limited partnerships play a role. Increasingly, domestic asset protection trusts play a role in about 10 or so states across the country, and even some international planning, something we used to do a lot of and less so over the last decade. So what we're trying to do with clients and move them from a negative position to a positive on most of their key assets. It's not the goal to get them to +5 across the board. It's not realistic. But I also think it's probably unwise to keep a lot of major assets in the -5 or -3 position. And that's how a lot of physicians come to us, and we're trying to move them to the positive position. Now, asset protection, the way we look at it at OJM Group, is not just the personal planning, which is certainly crucial and what I've been doing for 20 years for clients, but it's also the practice protection. So looking at the key assets of a practice, whether it be accounts receivable, real estate, equipment, cash flow. I can tell you that I see many practices with the real estate held in a separate entity, which is great, in a medical practice, but often that separate entity, whether it be an LLC or not, doesn't have the right language to it. And so really they think they're getting good asset protection, but they're not. The practice protection can also be tied to corporate structure and benefit planning, which leads to the potential for significant tax benefits. In fact, I've had clients who have said, yeah, I've had the asset protection planning in place for 10 years, and you know what, I never really needed to rely on it because I haven't had a claim against us that either at all or beyond insurance limits or et cetera. But I'm glad I put it in place because it's helped me save tens or maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes over the last decade. And that really can be achieved at the practice level. On the personal level, there's less opportunity for tax reduction when tied to asset protection. But we're looking at a client's home, their investments, their second home, retirement plans, et cetera, to make sure that they're as well shielded as they can be. Now, we always start our client planning with exempt assets, and I've got a whole nother video on ViewMedi just on exempt assets, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But basically, under federal bankruptcy law and under state law, outside of bankruptcy, there are certain assets and certain values that are beyond the reach of creditors. They're off the table. You can own the asset yourself. You don't have to pay lawyers. You don't have to spend money on new tax returns or share ownership with children or control. And often these have tax benefits as well. So there's really a lot of good reasons to use exempt assets to the extent you can. And again, a lot of physicians come to us from states where they have some significant exemptions, but they're not using them as much as they can be. And maybe they're even spending more money on legal fees, et cetera, than they really need to if they just availed themselves of the exempt assets. What are exempt assets? Well, qualified plans and IRAs are generally protected in most states. Homestead varies a lot in the different states from unlimited to zero. Life insurance and cash value life insurance and annuities in many states are also extremely well protected. And where I live in Florida, they're protected to an unlimited value. So again, we'd be happy to chat with you about what's protected in your state. Now, beyond beyond exempt assets, because some states are going to be very limited, you're going to need legal tools. And the most popular legal tools for such protection are limited liability companies and family limited partnerships, LLCs and FLPs. And the reason they're very popular is that if there's never a problem, you're maintaining control and access to the asset the whole time. Now, with an exempt asset, even if there is a problem, you have access and control of it because it's exempt, it's off the table. With limited liability companies and limited partnerships, it's not off the table in terms of if someone has a judgment against you. They have some rights to come after that FLP or an LLC, but that right is called a charging order, and the charging order means they can't get into the LLC or the limited partnership to get to the asset. They only have a right to distributions, but they can't force you to make a distribution. So it's really, and this graphic is kind of a crude way of showing it, but if someone has a charging order against your LLC or your interest in an LP and there's money in there, or there's real estate in there, or there's artwork in there, or there's business interest in there, they can't get in there. They can't force distributions. They can't get voting rights. They can't get membership rights. They only get a right to any distributions that are paid out, but they can't force them. So it puts them in a position to have some rights, and you'll have to negotiate with them, but you're in a position where you're keeping them from getting anything. So it's a very strong position where I consider a +2 on that sliding scale. I'm going to be doing another video in the future just on LLCs and limited partnerships. Okay? Now, there are other protective tools as well. There's domestic asset protection trusts, there's offshore planning, there's other irrevocable trusts, and over time on ViewMedi, I'm going to be doing other videos on these topics. Tenancy by the entirety is another one I'll do, and that's really specific to about 12 states, but in those states, that ownership form can be extremely beneficial, especially when you have one spouse who has liability, like a physician, and one spouse who does not, because tenancy by the entirety will effectively protect the assets in that ownership form in those states from claims against one spouse. So I use that myself. It's very strong in Florida, and it's something that many of you might consider. The keys to any success on the asset protection planning is, one, timing. You can't wait till you have a problem until you put the planning in place. because it's not going to be effective against those kind of foreseeable claims. Planning is really effective against unforeseen claims. So if the coast is clear today, if you don't have a claim, you don't have a concern, this is the time to put the planning in place. The other key to asset protection planning is integration. You want it to have, ideally, other benefits like estate planning, family planning, tax reduction, and having it integrate with, whether it's at the practice, the corporate structure and benefit planning, or even personally with your other goals. It shouldn't be done in isolation. It should be done in coordination with building wealth. You should be focusing on protecting it, and those two things should mesh up well together. Enjoy the free copies of our books, and I hope to have the opportunity to speak to all of you at some point soon. Thanks for watching.
OJM is a unique, multidisciplinary wealth management firm. We specialize in working with physicians, and our team has been helping doctors for over 20 years. In fact, we have worked with over 1,000 physician clients throughout the country. We would welcome the opportunity to speak with you about how we might be able to bring value to your wealth planning. As I mentioned at the outset of this video, we encourage you to request a copy of Wealth Management Made Simple, For Doctors Only, or one of our other books for physicians. Our books are available in hard copy, Kindle, and iPad formats, and you can get them all for free by clicking the button below. In addition to a free book, OJM Group also offers ViewMedi members a complimentary consultation, where we can answer your questions and see if our firm might be a good fit for your situation. Simply click the same button below to schedule your free consultation. Enjoy the free copies of our books, and we hope to speak with you soon. Thanks for watching.